When is Pesach, or Passover, this year in 2024? I'm going to give you a direct answer to that question and also briefly show you how to figure out those dates for yourself using the heavenly markers, the signs, the astronomical signs in the heavens that Yehoshua placed there so that we can know when these events take place. I'm putting out this short video now to provide a clear and concise answer. And again, I will also do a series on how time was measured anciently by our ancestors in the Torah to address the many questions that many people have on this topic and other topics of similar nature regarding when to keep Shabbat, when is a new moon. In short, Pesach will fall on the 14th day of the first month, the first new moon, the first dark moon, which aligns with the Gregorian calendar date of 3/23. That's the 7th day of the week. That means Hag HaMatzoth begins or aligns with Yom Rishon, this coming Yom Rishon, on 3/24/24. All of this is here on this little table I'm showing you. I'm going to go into this in much more detail as we go through this video. How did I arrive at these dates? Aren't these dates different than those used by Rabbinical Judaism or other groups? Yes. And we'll show you exactly how I arrived at them and how they're related to what's written in the Torah, in the Tanakh, so you can do this for yourself. But before doing so, I want to make another point that I think is most important as we discuss this topic. Ever since the destruction of the temple, yes, ever since our exile from the land of Yisrael because we disobeyed Yehoshua, there is simply a lot that Yehoshua commanded us to observe that we cannot do because we're no longer in the land. And we won't be able to fully observe everything that Yehoshua has commanded us until he restores us, until the full teshuvah, till we're fully brought back to Yehoshua. To help you understand what I'm getting at here, just look at Joshua chapter 5 for a moment. Here we're talking about the time where the children of Israel were about to enter the promised land, having been in the wilderness for 40 years. And it says at that time, Yehoshua said to Yehoshua, "Make for yourself flint knives and circumcise again the sons of Israel the second time." Circumcise again? What does that mean? Why? Look, verse 4 tells us the reason. This is the reason why Yehoshua circumcised them. All the people who came out of Mitzrayim, who were males, all of the men of war, died in the wilderness along the way after they came out of Mitzrayim. That's Egypt. For all the people who came out were circumcised, but all the people who were born in the wilderness along the way as they came out of Mitzrayim had not been circumcised. For the sons of Israel walked 40 years in the wilderness until all the nation, that is, the men of war who came out of Mitzrayim, perished because they did not listen to the voice of Yehoshua, to whom Yehoshua had sworn that he would not let them see the land which Yehoshua had sworn to their fathers to give us, a land flowing with milk and honey. So their children, whom he raised up in their place, Yehoshua circumcised. For they were uncircumcised, because they had not circumcised them along the way. Do you understand what we just read here? For 38 years, all the children that were born in the wilderness, they weren't circumcised. 38 years. And this is at a time when Moshe was living. Moshe was living and breathing Torah to them. He was receiving what Yehoshua instructed, al pi Yehoshua, by the mouth of Yehoshua. He wrote it down with his own hand by Yad Moshe, but he also spoke it. They heard Moshe speak these words. Yehoshua was literally dwelling in the midst of Yisrael. But there was no guilt. There was no burden of shame for not observing Pesach during those 38 years because Yehoshua said it was along the way. What they did observe, however, was the Shabbat. Yes, that was the test commandment. Yehoshua reigned manna down from heaven, the Hebrew word man. He rained manna down from heaven every day except Shabbat for the entire 40 years. But during that time, they were keeping Shabbat. They didn't keep Pesach for 38 years. And if you go down to verses 10 and 11 here in this book of Yehoshua chapter 5, you'll see that now that they are circumcised, they were able to keep Pesach, and they kept it on the 14th day of the first month, just as commanded. So there are things that we cannot do even today because we're not in the land, just like they couldn't do as they were on their way. They couldn't even circumcise. Notice also in Wayikra chapter 23. It says, "Speak to the sons of Israel and say to them, when you enter the land which I am going to give you," when you enter the land which I am going to give you. Notice, some things can only be done when you enter the land. Not here in the wilderness. When you enter the land which I'm going to give you and gather its harvest, then you shall bring in the sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest to the priest, the Kohanim. He shall wave the sheaf, that is the Omer, before Yehovah for you to be accepted on the day after the Shabbat. The priest shall wave it. Going down, it says, "Until this very day, until you have brought in the offering of your Elohim, you shall eat neither bread, nor roasted grain, nor new produce. It is to be a permanent statute throughout your generations in all your dwelling places." Now, in context, though, all your dwelling places means all the dwelling places in the land of Yisrael. Outside of the land of Yisrael, are we obliged to actually follow this? Can we actually keep this festival now when we don't even have a barley harvest? This festival here is referring to the wave offering of the Omer in the land of Israel when you reap the barley harvest. If you're somewhere else in the world, it may not even align with the right timing. Moreover, we don't even have a harvest because we're in exile. I don't have a barley harvest. This is not something I can actually do. We're not a nation right now where we could actually observe this, so this is something we cannot do. There's a lot we can't do simply because of the exile. And these are things that we'll do once we're returned to the land. As we're waking up, as we're coming out of the confusion that we've been in because of the transgressions we made as a people that led us to be exiled, there's no need for us to feel guilty or be made to feel guilty or to feel as if Yehoshua is going to condemn us if we don't understand these festivals exactly right, or if there's something we don't fully get. Teshuvah is a process. Teshuvah meaning returning to Yehoshua. Understanding when to celebrate these days in the midst of all the confusion is also a process. And my encouragement to you is to get the core things right first. Like the Aseret HaDvarim, the 10, the things that are written in stone. Like keeping Shabbat, like that's much more important than understanding exactly when a new moon occurs or when we're supposed to start the first month of the year, even though over time, as I've been on this journey for quite some time, I can see things pretty clearly and I can share with you what I have learned, which I will do in a series where I go into great depth and detail. But in this short video, I just want to give you the answer so you can at least see where these days align this year. But I also want to say that's not the core thing. That's not the most important thing. Read the book of Yirmiyahu. Read Yirmiyahu chapter 17 where he says, if you want to return to Yehoshua, start keeping Shabbat. Or like Yeshayahu chapter 58, come out of idolatry. Start keeping Shabbat. Start treating one another with fairness. Stop robbing each other. Start living according to what's written in the Torah. Live the right way of life. Like that is so much more important. Those principles, the principles of the Aseret HaDvarim, are so much more important than having the correct understanding of the new moon. If you're out here oppressing other people because they're keeping the moon different than you are, maybe that's a bigger problem that you have than someone who's actually understanding the moon correctly. So more important than getting the moon exactly right is to be in a right relationship with Yehoshua according to what's written in stone. Nevertheless, let me take a couple of minutes now and share with you exactly what the Torah says and how it aligns with the dates I just showed you for this year's keeping of Pesach. We start in the book of Shemoth where we read about Pesach. This month shall be the beginning of months for you. It is to be the first month of the year for you. The first month of the year is not in the fall. Anybody celebrating the fall as the first month of the year? Something's wrong there. And I also want to highlight that Yehoshua never, nowhere in the Tanakh, commanded us to celebrate the new year. There is no such thing as a new year celebration in the Tanakh. That's something that crept into from the Babylonian captivity. But those who are following Torah, we don't celebrate the new year. We celebrate the festivals as revealed in the Torah. They are all listed in Wayikra chapter 23, also Bamidbar chapters 28 and 29. But we're not going to spend too much time on that. I'm just going to try to give you the basics here. I'll do a series to show you exactly how to understand all of these festivals later. But right now, I want to get specifically to how to understand when to keep Pesach. Verse 3 talks about bringing in an animal from the flock, whether it be a lamb or a goat, on the 10th day of the month. Then we get down to verse 6, and it says, you shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month. Then the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel is to slaughter it, Bain ha'arbayim, that is between the two evenings. So at the end of the 14th day of the month, we slaughter the lambs, and then we keep Pesach, and we eat the Pesach the night of the 15th, the beginning of the 15th day of the month, and that's the first day of Hag HaMatzot. It goes on to say, verse 14, now this day shall be a memorial to you, and you shall celebrate it as a Hag, they say feast here, to Yehoshua. Throughout your generations you are to celebrate it as a permanent ordinance. For 7 days you shall eat matzot, that's unleavened bread. But on the first day you shall remove dough with yeast from your houses. For whoever eats anything with yeast from the first day until the 7th day, that person shall be cut off from Yisrael. Skipping down to verse 18. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month at evening, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at evening. For 7 days there shall be no dough with yeast found in your houses, for whoever eats anything with yeast, that person shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he is a stranger or a native in the land. So again, let's look back at the table I shared with you earlier. Notice the table has the 7 days of the week right at the top. Day 1, day 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In our custom, we don't give the days of the week names. We don't name them after pagan Elohim. They are numbered. In Hebrew, we would say Yom Rishon, Yom Sheni, Yom Shlishi, Yom Rivi'i, Yom Chamishi, Yom Shishi, Shabbat. Now, it just so happens that the new moon, which is the dark moon, occurred, and I will show you a chart from timeanddate.com based in Yerushalayim on the day that aligns with the Gregorian calendar date 310. So the month, or the Kodesh, was on 310, and that's day 1. Day 2, okay, was the 2nd day of the week. Day 7 was the 7th day of the week. And you count right down 14 days, you get to Shabbat, which is coming up this particular week. This week, Shabbat, on 3/23/24 in the Gregorian calendar, will be the 14th day of the Kodesh, or of the month. Therefore, it will be Pesach. And at the end of that day, as the day is going out, Bain ha'arbayim, that's when the lambs would have been killed. They would have been roasted. They would be eaten the night of the 15th. Now, I'm not slaughtering a lamb this year. I wish I could. But in the land of my captivity, in exile, I'm prevented from doing that. And so that's something I don't do this year. Anyway, moving on the 15th day, we have the Feast of Unleavened Bread, or Hag HaMatzoth, and that goes for 7 days, as we just read. So the first day of Unleavened Bread is the first day of the week this year. They align this year. They don't always align, but this year they do. And so you go day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The 7th day of Unleavened Bread, or the 21st day of the Kodesh, 21st day of the Hebrew month, aligns this year with the Gregorian date of 3/30/24. Moreover, you can go 1 day more, the morrow after the Shabbat, because the Shabbat that occurs during Hag HaMatzoth is this Shabbat we're talking about here on the 21st day of the month. And so the morrow after the Shabbat would be aligned with 3/31. That will be the 22nd day on the Hebrew month. And from that day, you would count the 7 weeks to get to Shavuot. But that's, again, going beyond the scope of what we want to talk about today. This table is a shortcut. How did I get this table? How did I make this table? I will put in the description of this video a link to timeanddate.com. You don't have to rely on the table I'm providing. You can do it yourself. I've shared with you the verses. You can go to timeanddate.com. Look for the moon phases for Yerushalayim in Israel, for Jerusalem and Israel, for the year 2024. In the table, you can see, therefore, when every conjunction, astronomical conjunction, occurred. And I will do a series on how to reckon time in the Tanakh. I will prove to you from the Torah and from the Tanakh that a Kodesh is literally the dark moon. It is the astronomical conjunction. It is a calculated moon. That's why Yehonathan and Dawid said, oh, tomorrow is the new moon. They calculated it. They weren't watching to see it. From the chart, you can see that the conjunction occurred on 3/10. That's the date when the conjunction occurred, the new moon occurred. So that's the first day of the month. It happened precisely at 11 a.m. It's an astronomical event. It happens when it happens. You can also then on timeanddate.com search for solstices and equinoxes. And in that table, you will find that for the year 2024, the equinox occurred, that is the spring equinox, will occur on 3/20, right at 5:06 a.m. How you determine, therefore, which new moon to use. Do you use the new moon of the 3rd month of the Gregorian calendar or the new moon of the 4th month of the Gregorian calendar to know which month to use to calculate Pesach? You look to see which one is closest to the equinox. This year, as you can see, since 3/10 is a Kodesh and 10 days later is the equinox on 3/20, well then clearly the new moon of 3/10 is the closest new moon to the equinox. That's how we plot, first of all, the first day of the month. And once we have the first day of the month that's closest to the equinox, then we just follow Torah. 14th day is Pesach. 15th day starts Hag HaMatzoth. And the 21st day is the last day of Hag HaMatzoth. It's really just that simple if you follow exactly what the Torah says. I am going to do a full video on how we know what day is Shabbat. What is a day? What is a month or a Kodesh? What is a year according to the Torah? I will do a video and explain these things in more detail because I know there are many people with questions and there's a lot of confusion, especially among those who are waking up now and in the process of teshuvah, in the process of return back to Yehoshua. And that's why this channel is called Talmidei Yehoshua. We are students. We are students collectively together, trying to unravel all of the confusion that has been placed upon us because we turned away from Yehoshua when we had it all. We are the ones who rebelled against Yehoshua and were kicked out and exiled from the land that Yehoshua swore to our fathers. And so it is going to take a process for us to return. I hope to see you with me as a student, learning from Yehoshua, learning what's in Torah, and making that journey together to return to Yehoshua. So if you like this video, hit like and subscribe, share this with your friends, and until next time, shalom, shalom.